disciplines. In terms of supplemental training, gym training, functional training, what's some of the ways in which you kind of maintain? I realize there's a level of fitness, obviously a high level of fitness that will come through actually doing the training itself. Are there supplemental disciplines, gym training, flexibility, functionality stuff that you do to support your training?
Yeah, so for sure, like hot yoga is a big one, like, because it's just, it needs to be done. It's like sometimes I don't feel like it, but I found that like the most valuable in terms of just like maintaining and building on flexibility. So that's definitely one. And then I'm also regularly going to the gym. Usually it's like I'm really big into cardio. Like I love running. Like I could just, if you put me on a treadmill at one pace, I'll just run forever. So I'm really big into that. And then like I do some weight training. I have a little bit also of a back injury, so I'm a little bit lighter in terms of doing squats, but again, a whole bunch of squats, chin-ups, dips. Those are like squats, jump squats, Tabata training, all into that. Just anything to kind of keep my cardio up. And, you know, I am not explosive, so I have to do, and I've been kind of a little bit lazy about it lately because I'm not, I just haven't really had the energy for it, but I have to practice Tabata training and like, doing jumping and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but like in my family, we're not jumpers. We cannot jump. So that's something I'm always trying to work on improving, is just getting more explosiveness. I do not have a lot of fast twitch muscle groups. Like it's just the way my body composition is, which is again one of the reasons why I was drawn to grappling, is like you're able to control the speed a little bit more when you're holding on to someone. Yeah, so those are kind of the main things that I'm doing right now. Also I'm not sure if they're kind of like a yoga style thing, but doing animals, so kind of just like crawling on the ground and that type of thing. So those are the main things I'm doing as far as like supplemental exercises.
A gentleman called Ido Portal, and he was doing sort of animalistic movement, and or in New Zealand it's called zoo. And it's really interesting to me because the idea of moving in a more natural and integrated way, I think, is a wonderful way of, becoming more integrated in your martial arts. I think the more you know your body, the more you're able to kind of move in a way which is, like I say, I know that whenever I get up from the chair these days, my knees sound like knuckles cracking.
Yeah, I know. I have that too.
It's sort of like the
yes. I've grown whenever I get into bed. I'm like my husband worries about me sometimes because I like scream as I get.
I will when I get into bed at night, I'm like, oh. I grew up with my grandmother, and she was in her later years. She would hop into bed. She'd laugh in the bed. She'd go, "Oh, lovely," and yes. I was like, "What? Come on!" And now I'm like, now I understand. Now I understand. Given how dangerous the world is becoming around all that sort of stuff and the potential for violence, how do you embody the notion of violence? Because there's fighting, there's training, there's sparring. What's your mentality around if violence arises? How do you train yourself to be able to sort of distinguish between the two, if that makes any sense?
For me, growing up, I grew up in a neighborhood that was a lower socioeconomic community. And so there was like, a lot of, there was shootings. One of my friends, her apartment building has had like, I don't know how many, like a lot of shootings at her building. And there was actually one gentleman, he was on the wrestling team. He didn't commit the crime, but he took the blame for a crime of stabbing someone, I think like 27 times. And it was some type of gang related thing, but this, I think he was a drug dealer. He stabbed this person and left him in the creek. Yeah, so he stabbed him like 27 times. It was like a crime of passion. But this kid who was on the team with us, he took the blame, ended up going to prison for a couple of years, and then later passed away from brain cancer after he got out a couple of years later. Extremely sad. It's like, it's, insanely sad. And then I had another friend, someone broke into his house, and he was also trained in martial arts, and he had to defend himself, and he unfortunately accidentally killed this person. He ended up getting cut himself. And then I know a surprising amount of people who have either had to kill someone or has taken the blame for it. So I have a unique perspective on violence. I've been lucky enough not to have any like really major encounters. Like, sometimes there's a creepy person at a bar who's trying to pull you away. So, it's just like simple wrist escape. But so I've had the opportunity to know the impact that it can have on people from a psychological perspective. It's like, it's truly a horrible thing. And I know sometimes think that they're like, oh, I can handle this and I can do that. But it's like, nah, I know you think you can. If you've never like interacted with it before, then no, you can't. And even like for myself, I've been doing martial arts for what year is it now? So, going on 23 years. And, when I see violence, it's like, it's still extremely scary, even for me being in it. Like when I'm working with a bigger person in grappling and they're right on top of me, it's scary. It's not like a unique thing to beginners. It's always scary, and it should be. But as far as like the connection of sparring, like when we're interacting in the dojo, and I speak about this in one of my blogs, it's like, this is like an act of play, because when we leave, we're still safe, or mostly safe. Sure, you might get banged up a little bit, but so do actors when they're filming things, and that's pretend as well. But it's like, it's more theatrical violence. It's like, okay, you're playing the bad guy, I'm playing the good guy, I'm escaping. But really, it's like, when you are practicing their things, there is no good guy, bad guy. There's no uke and tori. It's like, we're both learning to protect ourselves. So when it comes to real violence, it's like, you have to remember that what we normally do in the dojo is play. We try to amp it up and make it as close as possible to real violence as we can, but it's not. Like, nobody's going to stab me in the dojo. No one's going to shoot me. But what I found to be the best way to kind of get as close to it as possible is through competition, because that's the only time. Yes, it's like a finite amount of rules, but in terms of like the energy and the attitude and the adrenaline kick, there's no other way of replicating that unless you're in a competition. So for me, that's been the closest I could get to real violence. Again, it's not completely real because there's rule sets, but you are getting, because they're fighting against you. It's not like, okay, they're gonna stop if you feel pain. They're gonna keep going unless you tap, right? So for me, that's kind of like the closest thing you can get. As far as like for Krav Maga, I found that as far as the self-defense and like helping like really new people develop the skill set, that's the best one in my experience. Like, again, like my instructor for Krav Maga was really great. I haven't actually practiced Krav Maga since before COVID, just because I've been focusing on other things. But I found that to be the most effective in terms of helping new people get proficient in protecting themselves against the most common attacks. So for example, there was a woman that I was regularly training with. She played hockey. She was really fit. But her kicks were insane. And her knees were insane. Like, she had amazing leg strength. And I was like, this person is proficient at protecting themselves better, I think, than most karate black belts within only a couple of weeks, because she focused on the main things, main problems that she might experience in a real life situation. And she mastered those, and she had a plan. It was one thing. And like, she just went for it. And for my experience doing Krav Maga, it's like very much like a blitzkrieg approach, where it's like you just pile on a whole bunch of strikes so that they can't handle it, right? You get into a strong position, you hold it, and then you just try and beat the shit out of someone, usually a lot of knees to the groin.
Well, as a person who over the last however years has had more than a couple of knees to the groin, I can attest to the effectiveness. But I guess one of the things with Krav Maga is one is never enough. One is never enough. If you're gonna hit it, you might as well destroy it, right?
Yeah.
I had an excellent answer, I think, also too, in the context of sort of understanding sort of the realities of violence. I mean, wow, that's an amazing sort of learned, lived experience. And it brings to mind a saying, and it's better to study with a fighter who happens to teach as opposed to a teacher who happens to fight. One thing you did mention, although probably unconsciously, was the Martial Muse blog, which I've really enjoyed. I also enjoy the stuff that you're putting out on TikTok and Instagram. There is one that I kind of want to sort of unpick with you a little bit, if you don't mind. And it was this excellent one where you're talking about, hey, when it was talking about when a sensei is talking in general terms about putting something out there in terms of, okay, when you're practicing with someone, always like try to practice control or whatever. And you made this really excellent point. Always assume the instructor is speaking to you. In terms of creating the vlog, not the vlog, in terms of creating the Martial Muse blog, what was the impetus for it? What's some of your favorite ones? And when can we expect the release of the Martial Muse book and audio book?
So what was the reason for it? So I just felt like, because I had some unique opinions and experiences. So it originally started, so when I was actually doing my degree in religion, I was putting together like Zen meditation and martial arts together. That was like the best grade I've ever gotten on an essay. It was specifically about how the practice of like martial arts produces like this Zen experience. So I was like, oh, I've already written these things. I knew people within my community might be interested. So I originally had another blog which was just like a personal one. It was like Jenny's 2 pennies. And then and I did a couple of interviews like with other people within Koruchinati, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll make this a little bit more serious. So I was like trying to think of a cool name, and I thought of the Martial Arts Muse because I wanted it to be one. I felt like the concept of the muse was usually oriented with the feminine, and so for myself, like I grew up with 2 brothers, and I've been involved in martial arts for so long, and that's kind of like a very masculine experience. Like I grew up with boys. I did whenever my brothers were like trying to kill each other, I was jumping in there too. I like getting dirty and all this stuff. So, but at the same time, like I love pretty dresses. Pink is my favorite color. I love going out and I like wearing makeup and doing all these other things too. So I thought it was like a nice combo where it's like, okay, the martial arts muse. So it's like, that's kind of a combination of the masculine and feminine. That's what kind of stemmed from the name. Also, I found like one of my friend, Cody Stewart, he was developing a YouTube channel, KU Quick Tips. And so he'd often reach out to me. It's like, oh, what do you think of this? We kind of create ideas, and I kind of provide advice from a social media perspective because I'm a digital marketer by day. And so I knew that I was kind of I had ideas that I would like hand to people, but I wouldn't actually do anything with. And same thing with my husband. I'd be like, hey, have you considered this in terms of instructing things? But that's the nature of a muse, is that you give everyone else your ideas and leave none for yourself. So then I was like, okay, why don't I do this in a more formal way? And I knew I had a dream actually, which inspired it. So I remembered I was trying to climb up a mountain, and in my dream, an old friend of mine, he was like, he was having trouble too, and so we were kind of like trying to get up this mountain, but I was like, I wasn't as fast as everyone else. Like, everyone's climbing up this so much faster than I am. What's wrong with me? It's like I tried to do it one way and I'd slide down, tried to do another way, I'd slide down. And I was like, maybe. And then I saw like a waterfall on the mountain coming from the top. And I was like, what if I stopped climbing and I jumped into the waterfall and then swam up? And then that's what I did. I swam up and I got to the top of the mountain. So I was like, because other people were doing more videos, other people were running seminars. I was like, that doesn't seem necessarily like me. So I thought, okay, why don't I write a blog? Because that's going to be a unique way for me to share my experiences that not as many people were doing at the time within our like KU community. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of went that direction. And being in digital marketing, that's why I got started on Facebook and on Instagram. And so I thought that now the main way to kind of draw attention to your ideas is to use video content on social media. That's the best way to get the most reach, most engagement. So that's why I started kind of doing these little videos that are friendly reminders for people to kind of do certain things to optimize their training.
Well, I can say for me personally, I found them to be really motivational. I found them to be one of those things that kind of turns up just at the right time to get me into my gi or get me into the gym. I've really enjoyed them, and I would really encourage. I would love to get a compilation of those or just the writings. I've really enjoyed the blog, and I encourage everyone I'll put a link in the description to check it out, guys. If you get a chance, it's just one of those things that the way Jen's kind of constructed it is, if you're sitting waiting for a train, sitting on a bus, you're sitting in the back of a cab, or you've got 2 minutes and you just want to kind of just read a quick kind of food for thought, it is well worth the read. And I think that I found it to be a real lifeline in terms of if I'm lacking motivation. So if you get a chance, please do. And also check out the Instagram, which again I'll put links in the description. I think that there's a creative aspect, as martial artists. I think a lot of times people focus on the martial and not on the aspect of being an artist. So how would you define the artist element of the martial artist?